Well, I want you to impact this 11-inch plate at 1100 yards. Hi everyone, it's the 4-Gun Guy. And I just did a truing video not too long ago, but this is a different truing video. This is one that my gunsmith, Larry Deese, put together up at the range. He was off on his dope in the last match, and he said, hey, I need to really true my dope. And I said, okay, well, I'll help you with that. You know, I can get on the glass and see where you're impacting. And he said, no, we need to really true our dope. I said, okay, I'm intrigued. Let's see what that's going to be all about. So we met up at the range, and what I want to do is I want to go through the process that he laid out. I want to go through how we did it at the range, the results of that, and how much more confident I feel that I'm going to be able to impact this plate at 1,000 and 1,100 yards. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Well, usually if you have a range that goes out to say 1,100 yards, you're very lucky. And if you do, at 1,100 yards, they probably have some really huge steel plates. And maybe some of them, like you'll see coming up in a video that I shot after we did this, those plates might have some water lines on them, right? But in a match, you're not shooting at those big plates. You're shooting at this. This is a 1 MOA target at 1,000 yards. This is it. This is 1 MOA right here, this plate. So, you know, in my other truing videos, I was like, yeah, you know, we're impacting that truing bar. Let's say they have a 1 MOA truing bar at 1,000 yards, which would be the width of that plate, right? And you're impacting it. But where are you impacting it? Can you really see that far to see where you are? Are you center lined on it? Or are you hitting that upper edge and just nicking it? Because if you're hitting that upper edge, you're 6 inches off, right? Or 5 inches off at 1,000 yards. And that'll be fine for most of your shots, but on that 1 MOA plate, if that's going to make a difference for you moving up or down in the match, then yeah, that can be a big miss. So what we did was, because I asked Larry, I said, okay, I'll get on glass. He said, no. He says, here's what we're going to do. You're going to bring some cardboard. And we're going to draw a water line on this cardboard. And we're going to start at 300 yards. We're going to go 300, 400, 500, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1,100 yards. And I said, okay. But, you know, once you start getting past 700 yards with this, you're not really able to see your impacts on this paper. And he said, oh, no. He says, you misunderstand. I'm in my side-by-side. I'm down there, and I'm going to mark your impacts. Now, my buddy Lee wanted to hear the sound of the bullets whizzing into the target, so he went with Larry downrange. They were very safe the whole time. So I'm going to preface that right now by saying they were at a very safe distance. Then they drove back out, looked at the target, marked the target, drove back away. And this was a pretty time-consuming thing that we did here, right? Because safety is our #1 issue. And let's talk a little bit more about that and what you might encounter at a range that you can go to. Well, I'm very fortunate to have a good friend like Larry. We shoot matches out at his range. We shoot rimfire and centerfire matches. And he does go out to 1,100 yards, as you'll see. But it's an open range. So it's a private range. The matches are open to the public, but the range itself is private. And there's a handful of people that Larry trusts to go up and shoot at his range. When we do something like this, there were 4 of us. It was me, Larry, Lee, and Daniel. And so Daniel and I stayed back at the benches and shot all 4 rifles. Lee and Larry were out in the field. Again, these are paper targets. So they went out, they would mount the target, we would shoot the target with each rifle, and in between that, they would come back to the target, mark those shots, then leave, then we'd shoot the next rifle, and we'd repeat that process. I will tell you that communication is essential here, right? We were going back and forth. We started with walkie-talkies, but then one of the batteries died, so we went to mobile phones. Mobile phones were actually better because we verified everything each other said, right? We could see them through our scopes, and I'm going to say it again, in between every string, all magazines were out of the rifles. The bolts were open. No ammo was able to be chambered, right? So you have to set these safety protocols up before you start doing something like this. But as I said, we were in very good communication with each other. We would verify ranges safe, ranges hot. They would verify. So we went back and forth. It was a very good, there was very good communication there. So let's now talk about the results here and how, when you see all these shots on these pieces of paper, what all this means. All right, I'm going to put this up here as I talk to it. So let's start with the 300 to, I think this was 3 to 600 range, which was one of these sheets, but I'll put this up. And I'm going to kind of focus in on my shots, right? So as you can see, let's look at the 300 really quick. So what was happening is they were off safe, but they had binoculars, so they could see these shots, right? So I would take a shot, and you can see the first shot was a little high at 300 yards, right? So at 300 yards, that first shot is about an inch and a half high, okay? That's pretty good at 300 yards. But then he said, come down. And I think they might have mislabeled those 300s, but I think I only took 3 shots. So then he said, you know, come down, what, 2/10 or whatever. So I came down. Then that one was low. And he said, then he would say, come up 1/10. Then I shot. And you can see that middle shot there at 300 is pretty darn close to the water line. I mean, that is really about 1/4 of an inch when you look at the paper. So we call that good, okay? Then we go over to the 400. I'll look at these, and you can see, and I won't spend time on every one of these things, but you can see that at 400, again, I ended up probably 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. And then at 500, we came down, and at 500, again, I ended up pretty darn close after my second shot. And then at 600, I started off high, and then I came down pretty much, maybe a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch at the water line. So those shots were good. Now I want to say something here. Some of you are going to look at this and go, yeah, but look at your horizontal. And we weren't worried about that. There wasn't much wind. And when you start getting this many shots on the paper, you start shooting in different areas of the paper so they can see the shot. So don't worry about the horizontal dispersion here. That's not what we're interested in. We're in the vertical, and that's what this whole thing was about. Okay, let's move on to some of the others because this gets interesting as we start going out to distance. Okay, now we get to the 700 to 900 yard shots. So 700, 800, 900. And I'll just come in and look at mine here, and we'll focus in on them here. So my 700, you can see again at 700 yards, I end up maybe an inch, but more like 3/4 of an inch away from center line. At 800, I ended up, what, 1/8 of an inch off that line. And then at 900, I ended up about, again, 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4. So I was very, very happy with these results. Now, let's talk a little bit about this, because as you start moving out, and Larry is out there on the phone or walkie-talkie saying, come down a tenth, come up a tenth, you realize that those are pretty major adjustments out at distance, right? So you have to take that into consideration as well. He had some really good waterline shots with his rifle, and I was shooting his rifle. There were some interesting things that we found, and it wasn't that I was shooting in different areas of the paper. Larry found that when I would take a shot and then shoot at the same place, my second shot, I was always to the low and right, or I was always to the right of that first shot. It wasn't very windy that day, so I'm not sure that wind had anything to do with it. But this also pointed out something that maybe when I'm on the rifle, when I'm doing my trigger pull, maybe I'm inadvertently jerking the rifle, right? So I'm going to look at that and work on that the next time I go up to the range. Now let's go out to the 1000 and 1100, see those results, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what all this really means. 1000 and 1100 yards were very interesting, and again I'll put this up here. Let's start with the 1000. My first shot, Larry said, mark it, you're good, right? So with the first shot there, you can see at 1000 yards, that impact is about 1/4 of an inch off that line. In fact, I'm looking at it right here. I took the measurements, and it is about 1/4 of an inch off that line. At the 1100 yards, let's look at that one. I'll kind of zoom in there. At 1100 yards, that is 1, 2, 3.5 inches off the center line. So let's talk about now what all of that means and how we translate that back into our ballistic device and our ballistic app. I'll put this up here. So I had a pad actually, and this is it right here, with all the numbers and everything on it that I was writing down as we shot. So here's what you're doing. You are saying, work up your dope from your device or app before you shoot, right? So for what you're seeing here is the current dope at 300 is 1.1, 400 1.9, 500 2.8. This is for my rifle, and current cartridge. So you can see the current dope in blue. In green is where we ended up impacting the water line, or very close to it. So for example, you can see on mine at 300 yards, I had to come down a tenth, 400 down a tenth, 500 down a tenth, and all the way out to 800, where I then had to come down 2 tenths, 900 2 tenths. You see the pattern here, right? So these were the actuals. This is the current dope. And you can see in theirs, you can see that number one, we're running different cartridges. Larry is running a very fast 6 Creedmoor rifle. And you can see that here, right? At 1100 yards, when I'm at 10.9, he's at 8.2. So it's a big difference in how fast he's running as opposed to how fast I'm running. I think Daniel and I were very close because I think we're running very similar cartridges, and Lee, I think, is running a 6 Creedmoor as well, but slower than Larry. So it's interesting to see how all the different cartridges and rifles are different here. We've got what we had, we've got what we shot, and now we have to adjust either the Kestrel or our app in our mobile device. I actually run 2 different things. So I run my Kestrel for my matches and practice and everything, but I also have a geoballistics profile in my phone for backup. So if anything ever happens to this, I always have batteries, but let's say I don't, and this goes down, I've got my geoballistics as a backup that perfectly matches my Kestrel. And again, whatever you want to do there, you do. I started off here, I'll bring this chart up again. I started off here with these actuals, and I went in and I used the BC truing now. I was using a custom curve, but I kind of got away from that. So BC truing, I started at 1100, adjusted my BC until my dope said 10.9, and then I came back to 900, 800, 700, 600 to see if everything matched up. It started to not match up around 700 yards, right? And at 600 yards, there was a difference. So what I found was when I went to 600 and I adjusted my velocity, that trued everything up 600 in, and then my BC still held true out to 1100 yards. So everything in here, whatever I put in my Kestrel now, range or in geoballistics, it matches this new actual profile. And so I'm good to go. So I feel a lot more confident in my dope. Let's have some final thoughts. Well, final thoughts are going to be very interesting. I'm going to play a video here, and this didn't have any sound on it, but I'm going to play this video, and this is the 1,000 yard big plate. Remember I said at most ranges there's a really big plate at 1,000 yards. So that's the big plate at 1,000 yards. The little IPSC next to it, I think, is about a 1.5 MOA IPSC. And then the circle there, I think, is a 1 MOA, or it might be a 2 MOA, and then the small circle off to the right is a 1 MOA circle. But I was just looking at this big plate. I just wanted to see, are we going to hit that water line or not? And I'm going to trim this video down, so hopefully when I get to this point and I say I'm impacting that water line, I did impact the water line. So we were able to look right at it, and I was on that paint. The other thing I wanted to talk about here at this point was, remember when we say, and I did this before in my other video, a 30 foot per second difference. So let's say that you are, you're off on your dope, you're off on your velocity, right, by 30 feet per second. I'll put this one up here too. Remember, in my other video, at 1,000 yards, at running my 107 SMKs at 2780 and or at 2750, at 1,000 yards I'm dropping about 350 inches. At 1,000 yards running the 2780, 30 feet per second faster, I'm dropping 340 inches. That's 9 inches difference. That's 9 inches at 1,000 yards. This is an 11-inch plate, a 1 MOA plate. So if you haven't trued your dope lately, if you're changing cartridges, if you're changing powder, make sure that that velocity is staying where it should stay, and everything should be fine. If you're finding that your velocity is off by more than 10 feet per second, let's say, then look at things and try to adjust it to get it back to where it's fitting your profile, and then you should be good. Or you can adjust your profile to the new velocity. The challenge I have with that, though, is now if I'm adjusting my profile to that new velocity, what does that do to that BC setting from 600 out to 1,100 yards, right? I would almost rather adjust my charge to match the velocity that I know I'm hitting that target with, but that's just me. That's just me. All right, well, guys, wow, thanks for hanging in there. I love using the geoballistics app for this because I was able then to just export like 25-yard increments and then look at that and go back and forth in my Kestrel instead of using the Kestrel to do it. And I'll put that up here too during this last minute. But look, I want to thank Larry Deese, my gunsmith. This guy is probably just the most giving, the nicest, the most knowledgeable. Larry has forgotten more than any of us will ever know about shooting and gunsmithing and ballistics and everything. He really is a hell of a guy. So thanks, Larry, again. Lee and Daniel, thanks for being up there with this, because it was, with 4 guys, it was a lot easier. We shot 4 rifles, so everyone was able to chew their dope, which was awesome. Well, there you have it, guys. I'm very excited about this. And if you have a range or an area that you could do this with, even if you just go out to 600 yards, if you can find a range that you can put a paper target out there at 600 yards and then come back, take some shots, have some good glass that you could see those impacts with, that's going to at least help you waterline at that distance. Then you can true up to that and just go from there. And then see how things go in a match. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. All the likes, comments, subs, I really appreciate them all. And until next time, shoot straight.